And then when you're looking more broadly at midterms, history indicates that the party in power loses seats in the midterm elections. That's just, what the history books dictate. And Republicans obviously have control of the White House, the House, and the Senate, slim majorities in the House and the Senate. But I want to talk about some new Economist YouGov poll numbers, not looking too good for President Trump or Republicans in general. President Trump has a 39% approval rating. 47% of voters said that if elections were held today, they would vote for the Democratic congressional candidate versus the 40% who would vote for the Republican. And independents are preferring Democratic candidates over Republican candidates, 44% to 22%. As a Republican, you hear those numbers. What are you thinking 9 months out to Election Day?
I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked at all. I think, well, one, to your point, the party in power and the White House usually doesn't do great during midterms. But also, this is a president who likes to claim he's accomplished all these things. The economy is the best. This is the best. And in reality, that's not necessarily the case. And Americans are paying attention. They know that's not the case. Just because you say something doesn't mean it's true. I think Americans are doing their research, which, when something is coming directly out of the White House, out of the administration, those should be sources that you trust. And I think people find themselves saying, like, actually, let me double check that and make sure. So when Americans think, especially Republicans who voted in President Trump, say, you know what, his promises haven't been kept, that's alarming. And Republicans should be alarmed. The president should be alarmed. Obviously, he's not going to be able to run for re-election again, as much as they like to troll and suggest that. But it is a signal for Republicans moving forward, like, hey, it might be time for us to change and pivot here.
I do want to talk about what you think that signal means and how loud it potentially is blaring, because the results of a special election race in Texas at the end of last month have been described as a political earthquake. They've been described as a wake-up call for the Republican Party. A Democrat flipped a state Senate seat in a district that not only President Trump easily won in 2024, but a district that a Democrat hasn't represented in the state Senate in 4 decades. And just to really pinpoint how massive this swing was, 2024, President Trump won the area handily by 17 points. Then the Democrat in January won by 14 points. That means it was an over 30-point swing. If you're a Republican, what are you thinking now, and how do you see the writing on the wall there and approach your race?
I'd say this is a referendum on Republicans. I'd say that we are quickly approaching a lame duck presidency. Now, I've thought that we've been in one since the beginning, basically, because he isn't eligible to run again. But also the majority in Congress has been so slim in the House. And so it's been difficult to pass legislation, which is why you've seen so many executive orders which actually don't have any staying power and will probably be undone on the first day of the next presidency if it happens to be a Democrat. So if I'm a Republican, I'm starting to be forward thinking and remember that a post-Trump Republican Party exists, that it is going to be here sooner rather than later. And it might be time to get back to some of those fundamental values that have made the Republican Party the Republican Party.
And President Trump, he distanced himself from that race despite endorsing the Republican candidate. He was asked about her loss. He said he wasn't involved in that. That's a Texas local race. He also added, I'm not on the ballot. So when you're thinking, he'll never be on the ballot again, right? This is his second term. So when you're thinking about that post-Trump Republican Party, what does that look like for you?
For me, I hope it means getting back to basics. It's a love for the Constitution, the rule of law, First Amendment and Second Amendment, which even, funnily enough, now all of a sudden some Republicans are saying, well, guns, people shouldn't have guns at protests, even though we want to have guns at other times. So getting back to those fundamental basics and also remembering, we have to talk about these issues like immigration, like abortion now, which continues to be a topic that is brought up in conversation in relation to women's health and women's rights. We have to be able to talk about these things, yes, with discernment, but also not so callously. I did not say that right any of those 3 times, but not less cruelly. We have to be able to humanize these issues and these topics and not be so cruel. I'll mention Nikki Haley. I think that she was a really great messenger on some of these topics that Republicans have had a hard time talking about. Rhetoric matters, conversation matters. I'm a communicator. That is my background. So I especially put a lot of emphasis on this. But I do think it's important the way that not only are we legislating, but the way that we're talking about these issues. I think there is a lot of dehumanizing going on, a lot of othering going on. And just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that they're not human. And I think we need to remember that our neighbors are our neighbors, and they can be our friends, and they can disagree with us, and that is okay. That's what makes America America.
I know.